Page 7. Continued. Question 2. Write an essay on Shakespeare's source of Macbeth and how Shakespeare handles them. Answer. It is a well-known fact that Shakespeare never invented his story. He borrowed it from any source, but he took only the broad facts and transfigured them into a new whole by the alchemy of his genius. He breathed new life into the materials which he borrowed. As a result, what we get in Shakespeare's play is his creation. The incidents of Macbeth come from Holinshed's, quote, Chronicles of England, Scotland and Ireland, unquote, for the whiches he owes to Reginald Scott's Discovery of Witchcraft, 1584, News from Scotland, 1591, and King James's Demonology, Demonology, 1597. It has also been suggested that Shakespeare may have read or consulted the following works. 1. The Ballad of Macdobeth. 1. The Ballad of Macdobeth, 1596. 2. Malcolm, King of Scotland, mentioned by Henslowe, Henslowe. 3. Buchanan's History of Scotland, Buchanan. 4. Wintoun's, Wyntoun, Wintoun's Chronicles of Scotland, 1424. 5. A Poem, Chronicles of Scotland, by one Stewart, Stewart. Of course, Shakespeare's main source is Holinshed's Chronicles. The main suggestion of the play comes from Holinshed's version of the Duncan Macbeth story. Holinshed's Duncan is, quote, a faint-hearted milksop, unquote. Shakespeare makes him a king with royal dignity and even compels the admiration of his murderer. Page 8. Holinshed's Macbeth is just and noble ruler who had a real grievance against Duncan for ignoring his rightful claim to the throne. But with Shakespeare, Macbeth is a tyrant stricken with fears and stings of conscience. Holinshed makes Banquo Macbeth's partner in crime. Shakespeare makes him innocent. These changes contribute to the dramatic force and vividness. Duncan is made old, gracious, and good, and thus the enormity of Macbeth's crime is emphasized. Banquo is depicted as a foil to Macbeth. Shakespeare derives suggestions for other scenes from various other sections of Holinshed. For example, the murder of Banquo and the banquet scene, Macduff causing fear to Macbeth, the murder of Macduff's family, Macduff's plotting against Macbeth, Macbeth's death, and Malcolm's crowning. From the Duff Donwald story, Shakespeare has taken the hints for the murder scene. Donwald murders his liege, Liege, lord, when he is a guest in his own castle at the instigation of his wife who plans the terrible deed, and Donwald commits the crime. He also slays the chamberlains and overacts the horror to provoke suspicion. The crime is followed by prodigies, as in the play. Light is blotted out, clouds darken the sky, horses eat one another, and the sparhawk, within quotes, is, within quotes, strangled by an owl. Shakespeare has from Holinshed's account of King Kenneth the suggestion of Macbeth hearing the voice, quote, sleep no more, unquote. His loss of sleep, the sense of terror and remorse that haunts him. But Shakespeare's departures from his sources are more striking than the parallels. The revolt of MacDonald, the invasion of Sweno, Sweno, and the later attack by the forces of Canute. These three, separate in the chronicle and belonging to different times, are combined into one by Shakespeare. By this, Shakespeare has achieved dramatic economy. In Holinshed, MacDonald kills himself. In Shakespeare, he is slain by Macbeth. Macbeth's military glory is thereby enhanced. In Holinshed, Duff is killed by 4 servants, but in Shakespeare, Duncan is killed by Macbeth himself. The horror of the crime is thus increased. Banquo in the chronicle is killed after his return from the banquet, but this is not so in Shakespeare. Shakespeare condenses the 17 years of Macbeth's reign into about 10 weeks of absolute tyranny. Thus, in transforming the incident, Shakespeare's main object is to compress and condense, and thus to achieve dramatic economy and rapid movement of action. So far as characters are concerned, Shakespeare's changes are more significant. The character of Macbeth undergoes a complete transformation. In Holinshed, Macbeth has some claim to the throne. Shakespeare makes him an usurper. In the chronicle, Macbeth has long years of just and magnanimous administration. Shakespeare's Macbeth is a tyrant who made a hell of Scotland. On the other hand, however, Shakespeare endows him with a conscience, a fine perception, and a remarkable gift of imagination. Shakespeare's Macbeth has the career of a villain, but his character is noble and honourable. By indicating this paradox, he has depicted him as a hero who becomes a villain. In Holinshed, Lady Macbeth is a, quote, very ambitious lady, quote, burning in unquenchable desire to bear the name of a queen, unquote. But Shakespeare's Lady Macbeth is ambitious not on her own account. The famous sleepwalking scene, which is a fine stroke of creative imagination within quotes, is Shakespeare's creation. There is no hint of it in Holinshed. Dover Wilson endorses the view of C.C. Stopes from Shakespeare's Industry, that's the name of the book, who believes that Shakespeare's Lady Macbeth is modelled on William Stewart's Bulk of the Chronicles of Scotland, a metrical translation of Boece, B-O-E-C-E. But the parallels she cites are not convincing. Yet more striking departures from his source are made in the characters of Banquo and Duncan. In Holinshed, Banquo is an accomplice to Macbeth. Shakespeare makes him innocent. Page 9. He is disturbed by the cursed thoughts within quotes, but he tries to restrain them. Thus he is offered as a contrast to Macbeth. In depicting the character of Banquo, Shakespeare is guided by the object of pleasing James I, who derived his descent from Banquo. Shakespeare gives an ideal picture of Duncan, the royal within quotes, thy royal father. Macduff tells Malcolm, within quotes, was a most sainted king, unquote. Duncan's administration in the chronicle is, within quotes, feeble and slothful. He is, quote, a faint-hearted milksop. He is, quote, a faint-hearted milksop, more meek to govern a set of monks in some cloister than to have the rule of such valiant and hardy men of war as the Scots were, unquote. But Shakespeare's Duncan is a benevolent monarch, quote, a most sainted king, unquote. Shakespeare makes him much more older. The change serves the dramatic purpose of increasing the enormity of Macbeth's crime, while it enlists our sympathy for Duncan. Shakespeare's characterization of the witches is original. In Holinshed, there are weird sisters. certain wizards, and a witch who prophesies to Macbeth that he will not be slain by a man born of woman, nor defeated till the wood of Birnam comes to Dunsinane. Shakespeare makes them all into one. They are compounded by grossness and sublimity. They are, however, not sisters of destiny. They have no direct share in the action. Their power over nature and man is not absolute. Shakespeare handles his source with absolute freedom. He takes the raw materials from Holinshed, but the play is his own. He gives it the dynamics of drama and the subtlety of psychology. The opening scene, the dagger scene, the banquet scene, the sleepwalking scene are Shakespeare's inventions. Moreover, enchantment of atmosphere, the mystery of the supernatural, the glory of poetry, the wonder of characterization, and the grandeur of tragedy, all these belonged to Shakespeare. Question 3. What evidence do you find in the style and meter of Macbeth which goes to suggest that it is one of the later plays of Shakespeare? Answer. By tracing the different stages in the development of meter and style in Shakespeare's plays, one can deduce the approximate date of composition of a play. So far as Macbeth is concerned, it is possible to conclude from the evidence of style and meter that it is one of the later plays of Shakespeare. Shakespeare's early plays are marked by the dramatist's weakness for rhyme. The first period of Shakespeare's plays is therefore called the period of vanity of rhyme. The second period is called balance of power, which suggests that Shakespeare's power at the moment is mature and happily balanced. There is much less of rhyme and more of prose. The lines run on more frequently than before. Double endings are on the increase. The third period, extending from 1600 to 1608, is the period of his tragedies and bright as well as dark comedies. For the ease and suppleness of the middle period, there is now a gain in dramatic force. The lines have been split up, speeches are cut short in the middle of lines. Short broken lines are frequently found. His prose is colloquial. There is swift change from prose to verse. Imagery is clotted. The last stage in the development of style and meter is that of license of weak endings. In Macbeth, rhyme occurs only with a purpose. The witches speak in rhyme, and the dramatic purpose of it is to distinguish the speeches of the witches from those of the ordinary mortals. Rhyme is used also at the end of scenes and also in gnomic passages, Gnomic. Gnomic passages of elevated tone, as in Lady Macbeth's, quote, "Knots had all spent." Act 3, Scene 2, lines 4 to 7. Macbeth has a high proportion of run-on lines, enjambment, enjambement. This is a very important characteristic of Shakespeare's later plays. Another significant feature of Shakespeare's later plays is double ending, which means the ending of a line with an additional unstressed syllable. This gives dramatic force by varying to monotony of regular blank verse. Page 10. Shakespeare's early plays show a little of it. In Macbeth, double ending occurs largely. There is more of it in Macbeth than in Julius Caesar and Hamlet, which indicates that this is later than both. Light and weak endings used in Shakespeare's later plays enforce the run-on of line to line. Shakespeare ends lines with monosyllables like be, me, where, which have a very slight accent and so therefore light endings. In Macbeth, light endings occur more than weak endings. As many as 21 light endings have been counted in the play. In his early plays, a speech ends regularly at the end of a line. In his later plays, Shakespeare ends a speech midway in a line and completes the line by the first words of the next speaker. There is more of this in Macbeth than in the three other tragedies. These changes have made the blank verse more flexible and free. The iambic lines produce a swinging rhythm. The prosodic freedom, the varied and bold rhythms add a sense of life. The line ceases to be the unit of expression. The passage or paragraph takes its place. J.C. Smith rightly observes, quote, "The golden flow of his middle style is heard for the last time in Hamlet. In Othello, it begins to give place to a more troubled, though perhaps a deeper harmony. In Macbeth, the change has gone further, and he is on the verge of that careless freedom which characterizes his last period, the period of Antony and Cleopatra and the romances." Unquote. This is from Appendix 2, Grierson and Smith's edition. The stylistic features of the play, brevity of expression, compressed metaphors, swiftness of imagery, suggest a date later than the other tragedies. Metaphors are extravagant and imagery is clotted. Shakespeare's thought is swift and electric. It tends frequently to go beyond the bond of expression. The style is almost chaotic. It creates an explosive beauty of its own. The result is magnificence. For illustration of this style in Macbeth, we may cite the famous passage, quote, "Pity like a naked newborn babe." Unquote. Here, metaphors are strangely mixed and intricately twisted. The verse is whirling and the imagery complex. The style gives dramatic power and vividness. It brings out the turmoil in Macbeth's mind. Bradley points out that the play is, quote, "full of life and movement." Unquote. Quote, "The more pervading effect of beauty gives place to what may almost be called explosions of sublimity or pathos." Unquote. In Macbeth, Shakespeare makes a swift change from verse to prose without producing any jarring effect. Quite appropriately, the porter speaks prose and the sleepwalking lady speaks prose. From the consideration of these metrical and stylistic features, we can legitimately conclude that Macbeth is one of Shakespeare's later plays. Question 4. Comment on the structure of Macbeth. Answer. Professor Richard Moulton has shown great skills in examining the structure of Macbeth on classical models. It is of course a tour de force, but it underlines Macbeth's affinity with Greek tragedy. Arthur Symons, Symons, has remarked, quote, "Of all Shakespeare's tragedies, Macbeth is the simplest in outline, the swiftest in action." Unquote. He has elaborated his point, quote, "After the witch's prelude, the first scene brings us into the center of stormy interest, and in Macbeth's first words, an ambiguous note prepares us for strange things to come. Thence to the end, there is no turning aside in the increasing speed of events. The interest of the play is narrowed and intensified by being directed almost wholly upon two persons." Ellipsis. The real conflict out of which the action grows is the conflict between the worse and the better natures of these two persons. Unquote. There is nothing complicated about the plot of Macbeth. No plot within plot, no second story interwoven with the first. The incident moves on swiftly and straight from the beginning to the end. The structure of Shakespeare's plays is generally multilinear, but the structure of Macbeth is linear. Page 11. Macbeth has a single plot which develops with increasing tempo and moves to an inevitable end. The play has an inevitability and coherence which were not found by Robert Bridges and the historical critics like Professor Stoll and Professor Schucking, Schucking. Schucking. They were of the opinion that Shakespeare sacrificed psychological consistency to theatrical effect. As a matter of fact, Macbeth's inordinate ambition is whetted by the witches and his wife, and he is driven to his doom by the interplay of necessity and freedom. The first scene of Macbeth strikes the keynote of the drama. It suggests the spiritual forces which are at work in the play. The scene ends with the witch's enigmatic utterance, quote, "Foul is fair and fair is foul," unquote. The words which are echoed by Macbeth in his first appearance, quote, "So foul and fair a day," unquote. The hero has a shadow of fate over him from the beginning. The first scene is the exposition of the drama. The first act is devoted to the exposition of the antecedent circumstances and the introduction of important characters. Shakespeare builds up the character of Macbeth and indicates the basis of his ambition and his high qualities of head and heart. He succeeds in enlisting the sympathy of the audience in favor of the hero. It is the business of the exposition to suggest and lead to the conflict, and the resolution is only, quote, "the issue of the conflict in a catastrophe," unquote. At the end of the first act, the first crime is resolved upon, and the commission of this crime in the middle of the second act is the first crisis. In the physical plane, Macbeth's cause advances, and the second crisis, that is, the murder of Banquo, shows the further advancement of his cause. But with this external conflict, Shakespeare exhibits the intense spiritual conflict of the hero. His triumph in the physical plane is marked by the deep discomfiture in the spiritual plane expressed in his agony and despair. This brings his own nemesis. The banquet scene is the turning point. The vision of the ghost of Banquo suggests the spiritual crisis, and his compromising disclosures here anticipate the reversal of fortune. Counter-movement starts at the end of the third act. Macduff has joined Malcolm at the English court, and an English army headed by these two will soon be on its way. So hints of the reaction are already in sight. The fourth act is the weakest portion in the play. When the reaction sets in, the interest flags. Shakespeare, however, has his way to enliven it. Sometimes, quote, "the repetition of a first effect produces a fateful feeling," unquote. The reappearance of the witches and their fresh promises drive Macbeth forward to his doom. The sweet touch of domestic life in Lady Macduff and her son scene introduces a significant variation. The third crime hastens the counter-movement. It is purposeless slaughter. It gives a stronger motive to Macduff for vengeance. The downward trend of Macbeth's fortune is steadily maintained. In the fifth act, the action is again swift and vigorous. It is full of quick, startling external actions, and the catastrophe is brought about hurriedly. Macbeth's ruin is complete in his disaster in the battle and his death at the hand of his avenger. Shakespeare's play does not have the three unities of Greek drama. the unity of time, the unity of place, and the unity of action, but it is always characterized by a sense of totality. It has a unity of design. In tragedy, Shakespeare is careful to achieve a concentrated harmony. The interest centers in the rise and fall of the heroes. They are dragged into crime and driven to their ultimate doom by a tremendous force generated from within, which again creates external situations that hasten the end. We are interested in their rise and decline, their material success and spiritual dilemma, their remorse and their repinings and their different reactions to the crime. There are neither any extraneous situations nor any supernumerary characters. These occur in comedy. The Porter scene, which is the only extraneous scene, is also integrated into the structure of the drama by its grim spiritual significance. Page 12. It suggests the hell that Macbeth has made of the castle. All other characters are subordinate to the two central figures. Contrast of characters: Macbeth with Banquo, Macbeth with Lady Macbeth, Banquo and Macduff, is Shakespeare's very favourite method of achieving unity in diversity. Grierson observes, Grierson, quote, "Whenever the mind goes back to Macbeth, we see him and her alone. Their faces are pale and agitated, and on their hands are gouts of blood." Unquote. Indeed, Macbeth is almost classical in its impression of unity and coherence. Characters and situations are integrated into a coherent pattern. Images also help in achieving the unity of impression. Darkness, blood, tempest, light. These are recurrent verbal images reinforcing the thematic structure of the play. A thematic unity is discerned in the poetry of Macbeth, in its words and stage action. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard of no more. It is a tale told by an idiot. Ellipsis. Act 5, Scene 5, lines 24-28. Ideas implicit here are expressed elsewhere with similar words and significant variations. The whole play seems to reverberate within such lines.